Greetings, Questers. Can everybody hear me? Uh-oh, I don't see any audio going through. All right. Greetings, adventurers. All right, let's get this started. Thank you, everybody, for joining me again on the Questline Tavern, or Questline Tavern Tuesdays, as it seems to be coming. And yeah, I'd like to thank everybody and welcome everyone to the tavern. This week, we are going to talk about, we're going to continue on what we started last week with the Pathfinder second edition kind of updates that we were working on. And the main goal really is to update the original Pathfinder first edition character sheets that were originally created by another user, and I want to update it so that second edition is also playable, and with a really good set of utilities, and get that going. I'd like to talk about a couple of small things. One is I have just released the 0.8.8.0 release today, and this includes a number of fixes. And quite a number of other features, one of which is the whole new character sheet theming system. That is very exciting for me because that means I'm going to be able to kind of adjust games to be a little bit more centric around their idea and their kind of theme. And I've always been a big fan of like kind of customizing your game in your way. So that's always been a big thing for me. So one of the things that I've been slowly working on is adding a little bit more functionality to for everyone in terms of Game Master Plus subscriptions. The Game Master Plus subscription is only $1 more a month, and it comes with a number of small things that will, help your game. I've updated the limits for images and then video and audio. So if you're Game Master Plus, you'll have 25 megabytes and 50 megabytes respectively for the two different upload sizes. Now, I still try to cap that because we don't really want people uploading massive files. Otherwise, it just becomes a real burden on the whole system. But those should help, and it should be pretty nice to get that. I have some custom artwork coming specifically for the Game Master Plus tier, which is going to have special token frames that will be a GM Plus only token frame. So that's going to be a cool thing. And I have other things planned coming down the road to kind of like incentivize people who actually do want to have a GM Plus subscription can actually get a few extra things for it. Specifically, the game type editor was probably the big focus of this last update. I spent a lot of time really going through the sheet themes and trying to update a lot of the details surrounding that, everything from like the pips and from, placement and lots of extra options and fonts and different things that make the sheet a little bit more customizable. And there's a lot of small things that are in there, and there's just way too many small things to really kind of note in patch notes. Otherwise, it just makes your patch notes massive, and that's not fun. Just improving the overall feel and look of certain things. For components, added new pip component options, the coin box, and coin diamond, which are new pip options that are going to be really cool to look at. And I'll kind of show those off a little bit more tonight. I think I showed them off before. And I've also moved the inspiration button that existed on the D20 character sheets. So, D&D 5th edition and even things like Star Wars 5th edition and other games that have inspiration. I've moved it from its own individual box to now it is actually part of the bio configuration. And I will show that off a little bit later, but that's an easy way for us to kind of streamline some things and make the entire character sheet feel more cohesive. On the battle map, one of the things I did was I took a little time to improve the performance for multiple video files. One of the things I've noticed in the past is that when people are running, more than one video on a map, it can get pretty chuggy at certain points, especially on lower end machines. And so I took some time to look at the way it renders every frame and how it manages it, and managed to put in a little fix that is now much more capable. I actually had 5 different full-size videos, like 5 different maps, like rendered all at the same time, all doing everything, and it was performing at 60 frames a second. So I think people will find if they have like layered maps where you might have like a weather effect, and you might have a like a regular background map and maybe some other small things, it's actually going to perform a lot better for multiple things, and that's going to be very useful. There's a new add selected to encounter button. So the way it used to work is that you would have to select the tokens, and then you could click the button and it would add the tokens. Now, if you have nothing selected, or you're holding down the shift key, you can actually just click that same button and it'll add every token that's on the map to the encounter without you having to select anything. It's just a little faster way to do that stuff. And then also added to the game settings, there's a new default map scale. So typically when you set up your maps, you have a map scale. So like 5 feet for every square, or 1 meter for every square, or every hex. Whatever that may be, you can now set that up as part of the game type so that every new map that you create defaults to that as well. There's settings in the game type that set up the defaults, but now you can actually override those settings inside your game on top of like actual, other things. And then under the dice bags, one of the things that I spent some other time working on was the exploding rules for, game systems like Shadowrun 5th edition, Vampire, Cyberpunk Red, a number of other games that actually have exploding dice. I went back and kind of revamped that system so that it's a little easier to use, so that it actually helps support other games in the future, to where if you do have exploding dice, like it's a lot more configurable and it manages it better. And now the exploding dice actually use your secondary die color so that you can actually see which dice are the exploding dice. And then a bunch of bug fixes. If you want to go look at them, please feel free. You can always find the patch notes are always up here, and I think I explained that before, but you can find the change logs, and you can come in here and you can read through all the patch notes. And I try to go pretty detailed on what I'm doing, but I try not to go overboard, because a lot of people don't need to read very long patch notes. So that being said, let's dive in. Let me see, was there any other topics that I wanted to discuss? Let's see here. Let me look at my showcase for today. What we did last week was, as we were working on the Pathfinder system, I took some time to read through some of the rules to kind of update myself. And I think what we'll focus on today is the skills and how to get that skill system working, so that when we have various skills from Pathfinder, Pathfinder has a kind of a special setup with proficiencies, and you have, trained, I'm trying to remember exactly what it is, but it's there's 4 levels. Legendary is the last one. Master, there's trained and expert, I think it is. So when you are setting up your skills, we want a way that makes it so that we can track the individual levels of what they are and how they add proficiency. And it's +2 for every proficiency level that somebody has. Then on top of that, they have their standard attribute modifier, and then potentially any items or anything along those lines. So that's what we're going to try to focus on today, is getting that set up. And then going into looking at something like fortitude, reflex, and will, which are not much different. They work very similarly to skills in the sense that they are just something that is rollable, and you can actually have proficiency levels on them, and it gives you the ability to kind of modify and add that kind of stuff on the fly. But it's per saving throw. So that's what's really, I think, probably one of the more interesting parts about Pathfinder, is that you actually have different levels of proficiency in a lot of different things. And so you kind of have to track all that stuff. Things like perception, we'll work on that one too. All right. So let's step into the game type editor. So the main thing we'll work on is skills, the saving throws, and talking about perception. And we'll see how far we get from there. So I'm going to go into the editor. And the other thing that I will point out is, we're working on the new theming, and the theming is completely implemented and should be pretty functional for people. I'm sure there's probably a couple of bugs in there, and if people see them, please feel free to tell me, so we can work on actually improving, anything that is, a little goofy or something that doesn't work exactly the way you might think it would. And we'll find ways to improve that. All right. So we're going to take a look at the skills that are here. And there are some different skills, which we will deal with that, I think, after the fact, because we're going to just use the existing skills from D&D 5th edition. Or actually, no, these are from the original Pathfinder. So these might be everything we need, but there might be some new items. And I don't want to spend a lot of time going through data management. That's just not very interesting to watch. So let's talk about the skills component. The skills component is there's actually two different types of skills component. There's the D20 skills component, and then there's the basic skills component. Now, basic skills are built in a certain way that let you customize almost every aspect of those skills. There's all kinds of stuff that you can do with them. And actually, I'll go back to the home page, and I'll show Dragonbane off for a minute, just so that you can kind of see a really good example of a really nice skill system. In Dragonbane, the character sheets are very much similar to, the Pathfinder or D&D, where you have, skills, acrobatics, awareness, bartering, beast lore, what have you. But they also have this other idea of secondary skills, and then they also have weapon skills. And so you can see that I can actually break this down into different groups. And then on top of that, I actually added something else called a grimoire, which is all of the spells. Typically, all the spells in Questline, I suggest that people do actions, because it's the easiest way to kind of set it up out of the box. You don't have to do a lot. You don't have to do a lot of crazy stuff. But what I did was I took the entire grimoire that exists, and I built them into a skill system. And you can actually see, like Animal Whisperer, and it has rank 1 to 2, rank 1. It has 2 meters range. It's a stretch, and it's instant, so on and so forth. But it has all the stuff baked right in, and it shows me all my modifiers. And I am able to... You can come into the skill, and you can actually see, it actually has this skill prefab of animism added to it. So it actually adds animism, it adds the modifiers, and it just makes it a lot easier to work with. Oh no, my skills aren't clicking. I'll have to look at that. Maybe I broke something. But that's what I do. I break it and then I fix it. So let's talk about Pathfinder. Back to Pathfinder. All right. So our skill system in our player sheets is pretty straightforward because we're going to be using, and what I showed you in the Dragonbane one was actually the basic skills component, how customizable that was. And the D20 skills component is actually much more straightforward. And what I think I want to do is I want to break away from the D20 skills because of the way that the proficiencies work. And typically in D&D 5th edition, you would just simply have a proficiency value, and that proficiency gets added globally across everything. And in this, we don't really want to do that because every single skill has their own proficiency level. Every saving throw has their own proficiency level. So I think what I'll start with is actually, I think I'll take the idea of the saving throws and build them into an attribute, a basic attributes, and we'll kind of do the same mechanism in which your attributes, you can have, this is the D20 attribute. If I were to take, let me take a step back on that. Maybe I don't want to get too ahead of myself on certain things. All right. Let's just kind of take the idea of starting with a new set of skills. We're going to add a basic skills component. And so the basic skills, right, we're going to come down here and you can see very quickly, here's all the properties, and, you can set everything up as accordingly. And I hit the add button here down on skills, and I can just come in here and I can say like acrobatics. And what this will really do is this is going to set up just a basic skill for me to look at here. I'm going to add another one. Let me take a look at the rule book real quick. I'm going to look at skills. And I have acrobatics based on dexterity. It has untrained actions, balance, and tumble through. And then trained actions is maneuver, in flight, and squeeze. So what I think I want to, okay, so what we want to do is add in the next skill, which is Arcana, or Arcana, depending on where you're from and like to pronounce it differently. Then we'll add one more, and we're going to do Athletics. We're just doing this so we have something to work with. So as you can see, it's pretty straightforward to add skills, right? You don't have to do much. You don't need a short name. You can do something like a subtext. If I can show you when you type this in. When you do a subtext, it shows up here on the right. And this is a really good way for you to be like, oh, maybe I want to set this up to have some sort of text that helps define what this looks like. Maybe it's like, right? Maybe we say it's passive, right? And then you can kind of do this, and that looks pretty nice, and you can get a really good sense of certain things just by a quick glance at your sheet. I can also change the group. So if I want to say athletics was part of like physical, you can see that it shows up there. And then I can also use that to an advantage up here under where is it? There used to be a group by. There is a group by somewhere. Where'd it go? Oh, it's probably because I have the view type set to just skill and description, right? Because I want skill and value or skill and ranks. There's different types of the view type defines how the mechanics work, right? So skill and ranks let me do something like this, where I can say my value type is going to be a bonus. and then it adds all these different extra properties that I get, right? And so for every rank, I can actually change my, so I can say I want maybe 4 values, right? So because I want to say one is, trained, expert, master, and legendary, right? So for every pip, I want to say I'm going to add 2 to it. And so what I'm trying to remember is I believe the value offset is, that's not what I don't want to do a value offset. But here's the group by the way. It's not bonus. It's not upgrade. Let's see here. Maybe we pick a different one. So we want to do base roll with bonus and target, or base roll with bonus dice, base roll. And then it's funny when you have like worked on this and it's still, I've added so many pieces and possibilities that it takes a minute for me to remember how I set them up. And this is always a thing that I'm trying to pay attention to, like, because if it gets really confusing and it gets very hard, this also makes it hard for the users, and I don't want to do that. I really want to make this very straightforward for people, and it is fiddling around with some settings and doing some stuff, and I'm sure there's hidden stuff in here that people have a hard time finding. And I'd love to be able to streamline this out even more so that as people use it, they're like, oh, I can do this really quickly. But in the beginning, I really built this whole game type editor system for me so that I could very easily work on stuff and add stuff. You think here. So I do want just a straight bonus. I don't want a target. I don't want a group count. The roll direction is high. It is going to be a D20. That's the only available dice. So when you set this up, you can set the available dice, and it will actually set it so that the base roll only has this option. Oftentimes, you can just set it to whatever it is and then use the same thing. Or you can honestly just leave it blank and just pick the base roll from whatever it is. The base roll is more important than the available dice. Available dice only matters if you're actually trying to limit what the user can actually do or what the player can do. So it's just important to kind of see that. We'll just give it a skills name. The roll direction. This is an important tool when you have games that actually want to roll low instead of high. So this is a way for you to switch that around. It's a very useful tool. Games like, I believe, Break rolls low. And there's a number of games out there that actually want you to roll under. So let's see here. So ranks type, bonus, the prefixes, the show the star. Now showing the star allows me to do something like, when I do my star type, I can actually do things like, when they click on the star, it lets me do a bonus adjustment or a value adjustment. And so it's a good way for me to be able to set various pieces for things like the star. So if I do like a bonus multiplier, I could say, star is primary, but I don't really want to do that because I actually want to have 4 individual items. So as I think through this a little bit more. You can also, but this is the group by thing. I'll talk about that real quick. If I do set this to group, you'll see that it will try to group everything based off of the actual groups themselves. You can also set up the linked value, so you can group by that if you really want to, or none. It's really kind of up to you how you want to set that up. And I don't want to do. You could probably do something like, You could set the star title to be like trained, right? And maybe not. I don't think we want to use the star. I don't think that's going to help us. The real trouble is, and maybe this is something that, as I go through, this is the kind of stuff as I go through, building games and game types and stuff, I can see stuff where like this specific instance, Pathfinder, they actually have a multiplier, right? So it's 2, 4, 6, 8. So for every pip, you would want it to be 2, 4, 6, 8 instead of 1, 2, 3, 4. And so this is the kind of stuff that I'll often run into, and I'll be like, oh, well, this game system uses it this way. And so I have to, add a few small things. And I don't want to go into coding and start building all that stuff while on stream. That's just, I don't think that's going to be very entertaining for people. But I think what we can do, I will work on that, in my other offline time. But we can just use the pips as a way to kind of delineate that they are taking, individual ranks of whatever it is. And it's going to add a bonus of 2, 4, 6, or 8. And I will be able to set up something so that the ranks will actually allow me to set up a bonus. And so one of the things you can do, you can use the show total, and it will make the total show up here on the right, which is actually really helpful for people when you're doing something like this, because then they will actually see the bonus of 2, 4, 6, 8. But it will also show you it'll show you the total amount based off of the attribute itself. Now, we can change the pip size. We can set the max value, the min value. Value offset is not a -1. That's not what I wanted to do. These options here, right? The max value is just the number of pips that you can have. Min value is, I can only go to a 0. The 0 offset is that some games will actually have you start at like a -1 for like a skill. And this is a way for you to do that, where you can set, if I'm at 0, I'm actually at a -1 instead. And then you can also do a value offset. So maybe like they start in a -1, but then when they immediately do something, they actually go up by 2 on the first one. So the value offset, I could do something like this. 0 offset is -1. And then I can do a value offset of 1. So when they are trained in something, or if they have a rank in something, instead of them only having one a 0, because it would start at a -1, you could actually update that so that it actually starts at a 1. So you essentially skip the 0, and this is a way to kind of get around those mechanics. Don't need that for here though. So that starts at a 0. You can set the pip size. So we're going to make it a little bit smaller. Save ourselves a little bit of room. And then you can also set a ranks prefix. Now, this is a great way to, when you take a look at the sheet, I think actually what I'll do is see if I can't share this screen as well. Let me go to Pathfinder 2E. There we go. So I'll do this. It might be a little easier to switch back and forth between the two. Yeah, there you go. All right. So when you're looking at the sheet here, they have this like TEML, right? And that can be a very useful visualization of what people need to do. And a great way to do that is you can use this prefix. So TEML, right? And it'll show up right there, and people will intuitively kind of pick up that it follows the same order, so that the rank system kind of follows that. And that can be a really useful way to manage that. And then you can also set up this margin to the right, so that you can add reduce or add spacing to that if you really want to. Now, let's get into the individual skills themselves. Now, skills, often in the basic skill system, you actually have 2 different types of skills. They're either prefabs or immediates. A prefab skill is something that is available to people when they go to their character. You'll see at the very bottom here of the skills component that they have this add and add prefab. If there's any prefabs that are listed inside of this skill list, they can actually add the prefab, and they can add it when they need it. So sometimes there's games that have skills that are, have 50 skills, and they don't want to add 50 skills to their character sheet. They may only want to add, 2 or 3. And so having prefabs is a great way to do that. For a game like Pathfinder, the skills are pretty static, so they never really change. And so instead of using prefab, you do what's called immediate. And what this does is this sets it up so that every skill that is marked immediate, when a new character is created, it automatically adds all those skills to the skill list inside the character sheet. So it pre-populates everything, and that makes it a lot easier for players, so they don't have to add a lot of stuff. Now, where was I? Oh yeah, so the add type. Now, right underneath it, there's this other one called allow multiple. Now, this is a great one for the lore skills because let's see here. In Pathfinder, there is, I believe it is just lore that essentially lets you pick lore history, or sorry, not lore history, but like lore nobles or lore alchemy or something that gives you specific knowledge about something else. And rather than having to add a new skill every time, what you can actually do is you can create an item, and we'll call it lore. I didn't mean to. And you can set to a prefab and allow to multiple. And what this does is this allows the user, I'm going to save this. We're going to go out and we're going to take a look at this real quick. Actually, I didn't need to leave that. I'll go back in here. I'll go here. Oh, you didn't see any of that because I was pointing to the wrong tab. Go back. Sorry. That's me making mistakes. Go back down here. Sorry. So what I was saying, so I added this lore skill, right? I filled out these things and I set the type to prefab. And as it's set to prefab and allow multiple, what this will let me do is when I'm using the character and I have, and I open up this character sheet here, I'll scroll down to our new skill section. You'll see I have these values, right? I can do add prefab and I can find lore, right? And when I hit add, I can actually come in here and I can change the name. This is completely player driven. So maybe we do lore alchemy, right? Update this. And so now it says lore alchemy, and that looks just fine. I can come back in here and I can hit lore again. And so now I can add in multiples of these items, because you'll see that if I go to add a prefab, my acrobatics, let me add multiples. Did I not set that up right? You can remove things that quickly, though. So, I mean, if you ever have multiple items, you can always get rid of them. Okay, well, there's unfortunately yet another little bug. It used to be that when you go to add prefab, that if it was already added and it's not set to multiple, you could not add it again. So I'll have to go back and fix that and get that working again. So that way you can't, you don't have to add multiples because you never really need to. Now, so, it just, maybe you are candle maker, right? So this is kind of like the way that you set this up so that it makes it easier for you to do this. All right, I'm going to go back to here and share the tab. Now, when we're talking about how do we get like attributes in that to affect this specific skill, there's one of two ways to do it. The original way that I had set up Questline was that there was this idea called linked value, right? And this was a much more bare bones, simple way of doing the skill system. The new modifier system is a much better way to manage this, but it's really kind of at some point I will remove this linked value. So I highly recommend that you just use the modifiers because it's an easier tooling mechanism to do it. So we'll just kind of follow that pattern. So you come in, you hit add, and you come into here. And because lore, is probably based off of intelligence, generally speaking. And you can see, I can see all of my, skills in here and my prefab skills. But what you don't see is the attributes. And this is where, the D20 components don't play nice with the new basic skill system or the basic modifiers, all that kind of stuff. So I think based off of this, we might end up having to do a new component for the attributes, which is a little sad because it makes it a little harder to set up. Because this right here, the original D20, was very bare bones and very simple, and there was no way for you to say, other than a simple bonus, if I save this and I come back to here and I take a look at my character sheet here, I'll need to refresh this. This is something else that you'll need to do. If you're using two tabs like this, the game type will not update automatically. You'll have to refresh your game, just so you know. If you leave the game type editor and you go back using, and you save and you close the game type editor, it will reload. But I'm kind of doing this a little sideways. So in here, you can see that I have all my bonuses based off of, whatever this is, ranks and decks and all that stuff. It's all hooked up automatically. And in edit skills, I can come in here and I can actually modify and edit all of the ranks that I have. So, it's very easy for me to say, hey, I actually have 2 ranks in acrobatics because I'm trained. And there you go. It's very simple to do. But this is kind of this is the old system. And I'm trying to make it so that it's more robust for everyone here. And based off of the new system, to make this more streamlined so this is easier for users, I think this is really an important piece here. This, to me, when I look at this as a player, I don't really see immediately, like, how do I modify this very well? And I can edit the skills, but then now I have to manually manage this stuff very kind of heavily. And that's less intuitive. And I think something like this, where I could come in here and I could say, hey, I'm going to I just have to click on some pips. And there we go. I have my thing and I can click roll and there's my bonus, right? It's very straightforward to kind of, intuitively think about that. But we're kind of stuck at that position to where now ability scores are not available to the game. So maybe we're going to have to take a step back. This is why, like, when I go through this kind of stuff and I talk through what I'm trying to do and how this like all works, I find that this is a really good way to explain like how complicated some of these games can really be, because they have a lot of derived values. And I have a strong opinion of, I don't think we should over automate too much. Like, we should automate some things to make life easier and simpler for people, but we shouldn't automate the entire process of playing the game out of playing the game. It's, why are we playing games this way if we're doing that? So I tend to think like do some automation to help some calculations, to simplify some process. And then you can move on to, actually playing your game with, some very easy to use things. Let's think here. So, all right, let's do another thing here. So this is actually called ability scores. That's okay. So we're going to actually add a basic attributes component, and we're going to actually go through this as an exercise. So we want to add in, the 6 basic attributes. And what we really want to do is we want to set up this to be probably the panels. I like the new row panels, and I might have to make some code changes to get it so that you can do row panels here as well. It's not like this. Rows and row panels are slightly different. Let's think about this. All right. Let's do role type, because we know what we want to do. We want to set up, it's going to be a base role with a bonus value. Actually, this is what we want to do. Base role with value and bonus value. And the reason why I'm doing this is because there's a certain feature in here called bonus lookup. And this is a way so that if I do this, I can set up a bonus lookup table where I can say excuse me while I go look at the book, because I don't remember the attributes right off the top of my head. All right, so if I have a 1, so if I have a low of 1 and a high of 1, my value is -5. And then if I do, we're going to start at 2. So 2 to 3 is a -4. You'll see I'm adding this table system here. 4 to 5 is going to be a -3. 6 to 7 is going to be a -2. 8 to 9 is a -1. 10 and 11 is 0. And then 12 to 13 is +1. You can see, you can kind of follow this along pretty easily. I'm going to add a couple more. 18 and 19. Yeah, 18, 19 is +4. We're going to go, it goes all the way up to +7. I mean, it technically, you could go on and on and on. But we'll just go up to like 30, and maybe we can do that back to back. So 6, 7, 8. Add 2 more, and that should get us to 30. 9 and 10. All right. So with the bonus lookup, now you're going to have, and you can see, I'll have to add a collapsible group here because that gets pretty hard to, oh, I do have this collapse all. There you go. Makes it a little easier. So what we want to look at is our max value. So our max value we'll set to 99 for now. Our min value is 1. The default value is a 10. We'll start it off there. The value position is to the right. So you can see a lot of these settings will help me set this up. But now that we have attributes, the root field name, we're going to call it attributes. The attribute block we'll call attributes. So there's an idea of attributes and sub-attributes. Attributes are a way for you to say, you might want to actually have like 5 different groups of attributes. Like here's physical, here's mental, right? And that's just an example of 2. And then you have 3 attributes under one, and then 3 attributes under the other. It's a good way to distinguish the 2 very easily inside of this inside of one attribute component. But you can also just make a bunch of different attribute components if you really wanted to. This is just a good way to kind of break that down. So in here, we want to add each of the sub attributes. So, this is strength. We'll add a short name, and then the base roll is going to be a D20. We can add a description and a subtext. Excuse me, my nose itches. And you'll see here, like, it's starting to pop up as this row-based system. And I'm going to add a few more sub-attributes just so that we can get an idea of what we're looking at. So strength, dexterity, if I could type tonight. Do dex. I'm going to set the base roll again to a D20. And this is where you can kind of like customize this so that if you had a game that wanted to, set up different base rolls for different attributes, you could totally do that. And this is going to be Constitution. Set the base roll. And a base roll is really important when you have a roll-based, system. It is very important to set that up properly. And you'll see as I'm going along, they're getting added pretty easily. So we're going to do another one, and this one's going to be intelligence. And 2 more. And this is going to be wisdom. And 1 more sub-attribute. Charisma. All right. So now we have, we've set this up so that we can see each of these. And there's some cool things that you can do, like maybe I actually only want to show the short name. And so up here, you can go in the attributes, in the actual main block of the attributes, you can say use short names. So that's a good way for you to do that. You can also do something like show the primary star. And the primary star is a way for you to essentially like mark that, maybe you have a special, something in this. And oftentimes, like a class, your class has certain attributes that are the primary attributes. But you'll see when I come up here to the different panel styles, I can actually change how they look, right? I might want to go with a hex. I might want to go with a diamond. I might, I can change these panel styles. So there's different things you can do there. But then you might maybe say, I want to go with rows, which is a little different. It does something slightly different than it did before. The row panels lets you define the panel itself. Rows is just a simple one. There's now something called, there's also something called pip panels and pips. Vampire the Masquerade uses pips for their attributes if you want to go with that. And then there's just the standard panels. In standard panels, is the base setup for most attributes. And let me see. Let me try to fix the styling here. Panels. Where did it go? It's a bonus lookup. Here's my attributes, padding, primary star, grid. Oh, here it is. So my grid. So there we go. So as I have a grid here, I can set this up so that my attributes show up in a simple, straightforward grid. And we can go all the way back up to here. Well, that's set to row 2, and that's to row 3. Let's change that to row 4. Yeah. Kind of got everything, excuse me, a little out of whack, but I'm going to try to clean it up a little bit so that we can kind of move this down. So we're going to move this all the way to number 3. And now what you'll see is that you see how things are kind of going outside of the bounds of the attributes. And what you can do is there's actually a setting in here. Let me collapse these again. There's a setting in here called row height, and I can actually set this to a higher number based on what I'm actually trying to accomplish. So we'll keep going. Oh, the biggest reason is that we're seeing the dice, and we can hide the dice. So let's go back to 70 because that's more what we want. And then because we have a primary star, we also want to see. We want to put that star somewhere, and you can actually modify the primary star so that you can, one, you can change the type of the star. Maybe you want a circle, maybe you want a diamond, what have you. Maybe we'll go with diamonds for this one. But you can change the position. So we can change the top offset. So we're going to change it just so that it's just enough so that it kind of sits a little bit over to the side. And I don't like it all the way to the right, though. So one thing that you can do is, like, based off of our theming here. Oh, that's right. There's another option here, which is name alignment. You can set the attribute to be left, right, center. But I don't think we need to have attributes as a name here. It's actually not as useful. So oftentimes the display name, you can just get rid of it. So that way you're looking at this in a better light in terms of, it just reduces the noise that you see. But what we want to do is we want to change it so that, where did it go? There is a, I know that there's a way for me to get my text to go to the left. Where did I put it? Display name, tooltip, style, top offset, right, width, height. You can also change the size, which is something we'll do. We don't want it as big. Grid, rows, row gap, columns. Oh, there it is. So I can change the name alignment on the individual item. So I'm going to change them all to left. So now, what this does, this allows me to take what I was doing with the primary star, and I can actually take that primary star position and set it to 2. I think that will work. I can maybe move it up or make it inline even with the name, which I think I like. And now we have essentially what we're looking at here is the thing that we're not seeing here is the actual value. That's something that we want to fix. So in the D21, you see the actual, the score itself and then the bonus. And so we want to mimic that. And so what we want is allow custom, show dice additive value, encounter roll, attributes, group dice. We want to have, didn't we have this base roll with value and bonus value? Allow custom, allow bonus. Nope. Where did it go? We do have the ability to see both at the same time. Let me see if I can find one real quick. So if we go take a look at Dragonbane. So Dragonbane has straight values. And this is set up as a target. So we're just doing target. No, this isn't going to be the one I want. What about Cyberpunk? No, those are straight values. Excuse me while I try to remember what this is. Oh yeah, and it does give a lot of flexibility, and it really it's a very interesting thing to try to like manage all of these different game systems. There's so many different ways that people use these tools. When people are building TTRPGs, I've found that it's pretty crazy. I mean, I have probably like close to 40 different TTRPGs in my library that I, kind of go through. And I have found it exceptionally interesting, like how people solve mechanical problems with dice. And it's really cool because everybody does it a little differently here and a little differently there. And then they steal some ideas from someone over here and steal some ideas from someone over there. So I found it's very interesting to look at how people tend to do that. And I think it's a really cool thing to like build a system that can kind of do that and kind of let people do that. But it will probably be a never ending thing because every time I turn around, I see some new rule that I'm like, oh, somebody did it this way. And that's really hard to like figure out. Let's see if this has it. These just have, those are straight values as well. That's Fantasy Age. Mythcraft. Maybe Mythcraft is the one that does that. You guys get to see all my cool test games. Yeah, so this right here, defenses, is the way that I do this. But maybe it only shows up in the row. I could have sworn I had one that actually does it the way I was just looking at. It's always hard. It's always hard to find the exact thing that you're looking for. Nope. Because I know that I do a bunch of these different things in different games, and it's always hard to try to match. Is there a character sheet on here? Yeah, there is. Nope. I could spend probably like hours like sifting through all these things. Let's go take a look at Fallout. Fallout's a really interesting game system. The modifiers 2d20 system is actually really cool. You can see that I have this value, and I can edit my value, and it's just a straight value. When I go to roll it, it sets my target based on my value. And this is so 2d20 is also a roll low system. We'll just throw some dice because it's fun. Of course, they're terrible rolls. Always. Man. That's 5th edition, Cyberpunk, Castles and Crusades. Did I ever do anything get beyond that? No. That's the old D20 system. After the Lords of Memory, maybe in there. Nope. That's a row. Ironbound. Fabula. Monster of the Week, Lost Omens. Paracle. Maybe it's in one of these. Maybe it's in the Star Wars. Yeah, see, I do kind of do that where I have my bonus, but it's all set up as a single, set up as rows. And maybe that's what I'm missing here. So if I go take a look at, if I change this from panels to row, I could have sworn that I did have a way to set this up. Because, yeah, base roll with value and bonus value. I thought that that's what I was trying to set up here. But roll. Value and bonus. That's what it might be. It shows... Base target and value. Base target and value. Allow custom. Allow bonus. That's interesting. Bonus lookup. Curious if setting that will help. Target, value, and bonus. Where's the value? Why am I not seeing the value? Is there a bug in here that I created where it's actually stopping the value from showing up now? Let me save this. So reload this. Take a look. So if we edit the value, I would expect to see the bonus somewhere, but I don't. I've confounded myself. Hey, welcome everybody that's watching the stream. Thank you for coming in. Working on improving the Pathfinder 2nd edition game type using my Questline tools. And I'm trying to remember how I can set this up so that I can actually have a column-based approach of displaying my attributes, but also showing the bonus underneath. And I'm struggling to remember if I actually set it up that way. It's base roll with bonus value. Nope. Curious. Base roll with value, and I'm going to do a little code lookup real quick. So if we have base roll and value, allow bonus, yeah, maybe it is. Maybe I did set it up so that it only render with value. Show dice icons. You have to pardon me while I read through a little bit of code so I can remember how I did this. Allow bonus is this, and it's row and row panel. I think it's probably set up so that it has to be row panels. Okay. Or rows. But row panels. So maybe we'll have to adjust this, and maybe I'll have to come back. I think I'd like to try to improve this later and make it so that you can actually do this from, so you can kind of get this horizontal view instead of the vertical view. I kind of like the horizontal view when you only have about 6 attributes. I think it looks nicer. It's cleaner. It fits the sheet really well, and it's easy to look up. But for now, I think we'll just go this way, and maybe I'll do some work to adjust that so that we can have that working. But to get this to work and see it, we're going to do this. So we're going to set up the panel style. We're going to set up I guess we will just do, maybe we'll do round. That'll be fine for now. And then we have show primary star. We want to set up our star to be Yeah, we're going to actually... You can also use the up arrows. Oh, it's positioned right above that, huh? Why is that not moving as much as I want it to? That's interesting. Man, I'm constantly looking at stuff that... This is the stuff that I'm always running into where I'm like, oh, I could do this. And then I see something and then it doesn't work the way I expected it to because I've done something else. And I've prevented it from working that way. There it is. It's weird that it took so long to... All right, so diamond. That's it right there. See, I know when things are supposed to work. It's always really sad when you're like, I know it's supposed to work. I just watched it work 2 days ago. All right, so let's reduce that. We're going to get it to go right up here at the top. And so it's a... So now we have the primary star, which is, going to give us the ability to mark something that is what it is. And then when we do this, we can actually reduce this to a width of 2. So you can actually see it this way. And we want to set up the rolls. So we undo the hide dice, and now you can actually see the roll there on the right-hand side. Looks like we're going to have to adjust our offset again, though. I bet you I know why. Yeah, that's why. Okay, I figured that out. If you use the plus and minus arrows, it works. But if you actually manually come in here, change it, and you move it around, it's not updating properly. That'll be a small bug I'll have to fix. But now you can see that I have, these values are pretty easy to use. And we're going to move this because we're going to kind of try to match the pattern that we were doing before. So we're going to set the column to 3 and set the row to 3. The width is 2. And what you can do is this is where you can actually start to mix and match heights. So now if I turn on, let me get that back down for a second. I turn on the grid here. You'll see that I can actually start to match these up a little bit. And what I'll do is I will take this. I'm going to set that to there. I'm going to set that to there. I'm going to increase the height of this by 1 more. The AC is going to be just fine right there. But what we want to get is our initiative. Is that where it was? Encounter. Yep. We're going to move that to there. And now everything seems to look a little better. But if we look at the ability scores, right, and we take a close look at what we're trying to do here, we want the same result. And this whole exercise was really trying to show off setting up a new panel. And let's actually reduce the size of our panel real quick because I think it's a little too wide. Let's set not that, row panel round, primary star, sub attributes. That's for primary. There's our sub attributes. Oh, that's a feature that I don't have in here, that you can actually adjust the panel size. I'll have to add that because you definitely want to be able to adjust this panel. Maybe that'll work. Or maybe go with the hex pointed. Yeah, that actually looks pretty cool. Let's do that. And we're going to change again the primary star one more time. Where'd it go? right offset. Let's actually get it so that it goes. We will put it right up top. No, that doesn't look good either. So a lot of times fiddling with this stuff is a lot of the details that you can get kind of lost in. Oh, you know what? Maybe we'll go the other way. Go the other way. We'll put it on this side. Maybe something like that. We'll come back to that later. But now you can see that I've got kind of all these pieces right here. Oh my goodness. I have been fiddling around. I'm a potato streamer, totally. Rage Mage. I'm doing it. I was totally modifying all these things, and I did not share the other screen. This is the problem with sharing multiple screens. I'm going to go back to only using one screen because it's very difficult to see what I'm looking at. All right. So you can see here now, I can mark the primary. I can change the value. You can see the bonus that gets added here. So if I have, a dexterity of 14, I get a +2. So the table system works. You can see how all these pieces work together. And what I think is really neat now is with this, if I come back into the editor, you go back to my player, when I look at my skill system down here, and this is really kind of what our setup was all for, right? We were trying to go through the process of looking at how do you get your skills so that using a basic skills component can use the modifiers that are supplied by your attributes. And what we did is we went and created a basic attributes component, set it up so that it mimicked what the D20 component used to do, the ability scores. And we'll actually delete this because we don't need this one anymore. And now with the skill system, when I go in here and I look at these individual skills, I can actually come here. I will go back to the lore skill because this is what we were doing. You go to the modifiers and you hit add, and the modifier in here will actually now show your scores. And this is where it gets really neat because now I can say, well, this is based on intelligence. And the lore skill will pick that up. I can hit save. We'll go back. And I think this is going to add the actual intelligence score. We'll scroll all the way down and we'll see. Now, any skills that you have on the page, this is one thing when you're testing this and you're working in this on your own. If you have a skill that exists on the page, you're going to have to remove it, because if I come in here and I take a look at my skill, you'll see that the modifier actually isn't here. And that's because it didn't exist when I added the skill originally. It's a really good tip to remember, because sometimes you might be like, why is this not there? You can do one of two things. You can either just remove it and re-add it, or you can come in here and add it, add the modifier again. So it's pretty easy just to come in here and add the modifier, say intelligence, and I'll hit update. And you'll see it's a +10, right? So this is one of the things that we want to make sure that we get correct. We actually want it to use the bonus value instead of the intelligence raw score, right? I'll collapse this and skills and prefabs. And so all you can see here is just these values. And so what we really need to do is you need to make sure you go back into your game settings, and you're going to go back to your attributes. And in here, this is where it's important to, I believe, you can say allow custom and allow bonus. And I believe additive value. Hit save. And then we're going to go back down to the skills section. go to lore, intelligence, and now you can actually see the bonus value show up as a modifier. And that's where it gets, this is the flexibility that you really have with doing this. So now I can change that to say intelligence bonus. I can save that. I'm going to go back. I'll modify the character as well. I can come down to the skill, alchemy, change this to say intelligence bonus, update. And because I don't have any intelligence, you'll see that it absolutely works. So now I can change this to a 12. I get a bonus of +1. I can come down here, and now I can see my lore is a +1. Now if I do this, and you're going to see my total value here is a 2. And that's because I marked this, and I have a bonus, and it lets me see, and you can actually mouse over the value, and it will show you 1, which is the base, which is based off of this, and then a +1 for my intelligence. Now, the other thing too is that this is also going to be based off of level. So levels affect your skills and all the pieces that are surrounding it, which we'll get into, we'll continue working on this and we'll add that kind of stuff. But this is where you can start to get into the automation of all those things. And if I hit roll, you'll see I have a bonus of +2. I can test it out. I got a 10. That works pretty well. So now what I want to do, a couple of takeaways that we can do from this is that we want to, one, add a multiplier setup. So that's some coding I'm going to have to do so that skills, the ranks can actually be multipliers instead of just a flat value. So what I want to do is set it up so that I can set the value for each rank. So that I can say if I have 1 rank, it's a 2. If it's 2 ranks, it's 4, so on and so forth. And then that'll come out with the total, and then we'll get the total that we're actually looking for Pathfinder. And so with this setup, makes it so that going forward, when I'm a player and I, gain a level, I can very easily come in here and I can just modify and be like, you know what, I'm an expert or I'm a master level in Arcana, and it will automatically do the calculations. It will, add all of their attributes to it and add their level. And that's pretty much the basis for what you're really trying to do. And if the player ever needs to edit this is where you can really get into some nice pieces of customization. The player can come in here, let's say that this was already set up. The intelligence bonus was already there. I hit accept, I hit update, right? And, I see I have a +4, right? Based off of that. But they can come in here and they can actually add, again, there's something under here, under custom value. And I can literally just say, you know what? It's a 3. Update. And there you go. I have a custom value. So they can still modify their scores based off of any arbitrary value they want, but you can automate a good chunk of that so that the basic pieces of this where they don't want to really automate because it's based off of a couple of derived values, this is just the easy way to kind of set it up. And then once they do this, like they don't really need to do it again, like unless something really changes. And going forward, it's a lot easier for people to manipulate like all these pieces, like just on the fly. And then it also keeps track of things like, well, they've gained proficiency in these different skills, which is a piece of levelable architecture, as it were, right? It's things as they do advancement in the game, they're going to gain levels in, skills or I should say proficiencies in them. And that's a really good way to kind of set all that stuff up. So I think I've gone on plenty long about doing this. This was a pretty strong and heavy deep dive of, how can you set up a basic attribute, and I kind of wanted to go even more into some of the other pieces because you can go further I'll go back to the editor. But we're talking about trying to set up other things like saving throws and armor class, and which also have proficiencies that are tied to it. And so I think it's important that as you set up your system, you kind of go through these basic steps of like, okay, I want to set up basic attributes. I want to set up basic hit points. I want to set up my speed, or I want to set up my initiative. What kind of initiative system am I using? What kind of armor class, or what defenses do I have for this character? And we went over things like conditions and the actions. That kind of stuff is all the basic premise in the bio system too. So when I'm looking at this, I have all these basic pieces so that I can start to essentially build the character sheet that I see here. And I can start to put all of the pieces of the character sheet together into the custom character sheet. And then you eventually start to get to this point where you have this really useful sheet. And I haven't had to do any coding. I have to do coding. And that's what I'm here for. I'm here to write the code for you guys. And make it so that it's easy to, kind of do these things. Now, you saw me kind of stumble through some of these things because there's a lot of options. And so if you ever need help, come to my Discord channel and come talk to me, send me a message. You can email me at, info or support@starleaflabs.com. You can get a hold of me that way. You can find me on Threads or Facebook or TikTok. Message me somewhere that, you want help, and I'm happy to help you figure some stuff out. And the more I can make this cleaner and easier for people to use, I think this is going to, it's very complicated to take literally all of these moving parts that exist in tabletop RPGs and try to boil them down into this game type editor. Like, somebody asked me when I was at the Granite Con back in September, they asked me to what's actually, no, it was because of Granite Con. So I had the interview with Grimwood Games, not too long ago. It was kind of why I started the whole streaming thing, was because I think it's really important to just talk to you, essentially face to face. What can I do to, bridge that gap? And I can't just be making tutorial videos on YouTube all the time because they get outdated and it's really hard. And so I thought maybe if I just did like a weekly stream, I could kind of go over some of these things and I could talk about some of the new stuff, and it would really help, and it would kind of keep things going forward. But Grim had asked me a question, which was, what is the most proud feature, do you have in Questline? And it's this tool is exceptionally powerful, and it can be a lot, and it can be overwhelming, and I don't want it to be overwhelming, but tabletop RPGs are super crunchy. And that's a whole part of the design of tabletop RPGs, is that they're intended to be partially crunchy and, have you like doing math and doing things. And it's part of the fun. And now obviously there's different levels of it. Some people like really crunchy and some people like crunchy light. Some people don't like crunchy at all, and want more theater of the mind and more role play. So I'm trying to balance all those different things and add all these tools. But like I said, if you have questions, I am more than happy to answer and give you guys tutorials and walk you through it and help you figure stuff out. It's a really fun thing for me to do. So when I run into things that I find blockers of, I love to be able to solve those problems, and I can build something that, okay, well, now I'm going to work on this. I'm going to, add this piece in there. And so I'm going to take away a couple of things from tonight that I'll be able to work on and improve, and make it so that it's a little easier. And honestly, like, I see some things where I'm like, it could have been easier to work on that. I'll have to rethink some of these things and get better at that. But it's also very good to show it off to you all, because then I can kind of see my own failing points and try to get better at that. But so I think our plan is next week I'll spend some time going through some more of the Pathfinder stuff. And I think I'll spend a little time actually working on migrating a sheet that exists in a game that just needs some theming updates, right? You can see these new themes are really cool looking and they're really, interesting. But I think it's important that people have the opportunity to see how they can go into their own game type and very quickly edit, the theme. And I think that would be a great topic for discussion next week. Let's see here. So we did kind of talk about things like, essentially live testing and debugging, right? We were essentially debugging some of our own things. How do you fix some of those problems? How do you go through it? What kind of tools do you have at your disposal to figure that stuff out? The preview inside the game type editor, I think, is very, very important because you see a lot of the things that are available. And even things like, maybe you want to change the progress bar, and I want it to look like this. And I want it to, be thin. And maybe I want to go with a fantasy light. Maybe I want to go with that theme. So there's a lot of pieces that is available that as you play around with these things, you're supposed to get a preview of what you're doing. So it's a real-time kind of editing experience. Does anybody have any questions that's watching the stream? If you do, I'd love to hear from you. Anna, you've been great. I appreciate, your commentary and you're talking to me. It's there's a lot. So, trying to walk people through individual pieces. And I know that there's more to it than certain spaces. Like, I'm sure there's pieces on the skills that I could go and I could talk on even more, some of the more kind of foundational pieces and get into some more details. But it's, hopefully over time, people will be able to go back through some of these videos and find, little snippets and, tricks that I've managed to do or put into the system. All right. So if I don't have any other questions, I think what we'll do is we will end like we did last week and, share us on Discord. Please like the videos, add comments, subscribe, talk to us on social media, tell your friends about us. I think I am a big believer in essentially word of mouth. If you love Questline, if you enjoy Questline, if you even just like what you're looking at here, please share us with your friends. Go play a game. Create a one-shot in, pick up a game like Dragonbane or Shadow Dark or, Neon Lords of the Toxic Wasteland. Go pick up quick games that you can do really easily and use Questline. And I promise you, when you see it running and you're actually using Questline, you're going to find that the table is so much less intrusive and it's going to be a much smoother experience. And, but yeah, please share us and find us and talk to us. The more support I can get, the more I can work on this and the more I can, get some help working on this so that it becomes so much more than it already is. I mean, you can do everything already, and I have so many more plans that I want to do with it. So please help me. Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. With that, I will leave you for the evening. Thank you very much for stopping by. I really appreciate everybody looking and looking at what we're doing and supporting me. I can't thank you enough. So for that, I will leave you for the evening. Your table, your story, your way. Have a good night.